What is going on with college students today? So I'm watching all of these protests and their little autonomous zones and their tent encampments pop up. There's one, like, what is it, a Polytech University right now out of California, and they have an Infantata Hall where they took over a school hall. There's vandalism on the walls and all kinds of stuff. And I have to tell you, I'm in my 30s. And yes, to a college student, that is ancient. But once you hit your 30s, you realize that college was just yesterday and you are, in fact, still a baby. And again, none of this stuff was that long ago. But even in that short amount of time, I feel like what I'm watching, I don't recognize. I feel like these college kids, yeah, they have an ideological difference than me, but it's not just that. It's not that they're protesting. There's just a level of entitlement that didn't exist when I was in college. I felt like there's just an overall difference in just general knowledge. Like, they don't seem to know as much, and they don't also seem to understand even how the world works just in general. And I'm also seeing that from some of the professors, like some of the professors that I've seen get arrested, where when, the cops are telling them, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do, and if you do the thing that you can't do, I will detain you. And then they get detained and they're like, you're a fascist, oh my gosh, this is illegal, film this. When I was in college, when I was college age, I went to college around this university. It was called James Madison University. You can look all of this up. It's really funny. And every year, once a year, they would have alumni weekend. And during alumni weekend in the spring, this was not a campus event, the block parties, but the students would throw these huge block parties. Thousands of kids. So they would do it in off-campus apartment housing, and they would do it, there was like a bunch of like duplexes and apartments that surrounded a huge field. So the block parties would be in that field, and then all of the apartments and townhomes surrounding, people would be out. Huge deal. People would come from all over. Alumni would come back. Big thing. But obviously it typically got a little bit out of hand. I'm sure you can imagine thousands of college students drinking all day. So the campus was finally like, okay, we're going to let you do your block parties. Obviously it's too big. We can't stop it. We're going to let you do that, but we're going to have a deal. You guys got to break it up by about 6 p.m. So at about 6 p.m., you're done. Campus police, riot police are coming out and they're clearing the lawn. The lawn has to be clear at 6. But you can imagine every year, 6 p.m. rolls around and not every student wants to leave. And some of them at this point are intoxicated and they're just giving police a hard time just to give them a hard time. The last year that I attended, there was pepper spray, there were rubber bullets, there was tear gas. And then every year the riot police, they come out, they line up and they clear the field. That's what they do. And students would get arrested, students would get pepper sprayed, they would get tear gassed, but you never saw one person crying, whining about it, complaining about it. No one went to the news and talked about the fascist police because we knew better. We were out there, we knew what we were doing, we took the consequences like a grown-up and continued to party. And I think this is a result, I'm sure there are many things, but I think this is a result of just adults not adulting in these kids' life. There have been a trend policing, education, mental health, even parenting, and the trend is more hands-off. The trend is less discipline. The trend is the kid knows what's best for them. And I think that had good intentions, but sometimes you go a little bit far. The reason we were just different was because we understood consequences. We knew that there were going to be consequences for our behavior, and we got it. So now you have these kids, they act a fool, and when they're finally held to account, they don't know how to deal with it. One of my very first jobs right out of college was I worked with at-risk teenagers. So these were the kids that would definitely have interactions with cops. These were the kids that would cuss out their teachers, that would get in fights at school. So that's who they were. And I'm a firm believer that one of the kindest, most compassionate things you could do to a child is hold them accountable. You, as the adult, are what teaches the kid right versus wrong. And so much now we're rewarding bad behavior, and now you're just creating bad adults who don't know how to function in society. And I would see it time and time again. You would work with kids that anyone that works in this field with kids knows. If you work in the same location for a while, unfortunately you'll watch some kids grow up in the system. So you'll be working with a kid, maybe you start working with that kid from 12, you'll work with them until they age out at 18, and what you will see is the kids that were not held accountable, the kids that didn't have proper structure and proper discipline, those the kids that will eventually later in life get in trouble and eventually face that consequence. But isn't it better to show them what those consequences are when they're younger, when the consequences are easier to handle, when it's easier to reshape and correct bad behavior, but they get away with it for so long, and then they have these interactions as an adult and they don't understand what they did, or the consequences are worse, or the consequence on society is worse. Because what happens with a lot of these kids, or I'm going off into left field right now. I went off into a tangent talking about what I used to do for work. But what would happen a lot of times with these kids is they'll go to the judge, and the judge wants to be nice to them because you see this young kid and you don't want to put this kid away in JDC, or you want to let the kid go because they're a kid, but they don't learn anything. I always think it's better to hold someone or give them a tougher consequence the first time around than have them do it again and again, possibly being a danger or a menace to society and a danger and a menace to themselves. But I think that's where I know I just went off into a tangent. But what I mean to say is I think that's where a lot of this stuff started, was this trend of wanting to be a little bit more hands-off, not so punitive. But now we're seeing the back end of that trend. So hopefully the pendulum will swing a little bit this way.